hash sign. To enable audio controls, please enter your audio PIN followed by the pound or hash sign.
Hey, can folks hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Can you hear
can
me,
hear you.
Dan?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with this. For some reason, my computer audio is not working, but I'll just work it through my phone. So
We've had those problems with some of our staff has had problems with audio. I don't know. Something this week.
yeah, no, it's weird because it was saying your computer audio is working fine, and I'm like, but I can't hear. And so we use the universal up and down. That's the only way to do it. So Tom, I started recording. Whenever you're ready to go, feel free. I think we do have to do a roll call.
Yeah, let's go ahead and call today's meeting to order. I'll go ahead and do a roll call real quick, Dan. Angela Manning.
Here.
Bill Benea.
Here.
Christina Bader. I see Christina.
Here.
Thanks, Christina. Mayor Williams.
Here.
Tom Rickert.
Here.
Holly Waters, Metra.
This is Dustin Clark in place of Holly Waters.
Thanks, Dustin. Tom Radak, Pace.
This is Dave Tomzik. I'm sitting in for Tom.
Okay,
Pace.
thanks, Dave.
Okay.
And Heather Tabbert Mullins, I saw you earlier.
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. And also joining us is, I think, John Donovan from FHWA.
Here.
And Tony from FTA.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. Let's get rolling on. We have no agenda changes. And we didn't ask for announcements. Does anyone have any announcements they'd like to make at this time? If not, has everyone had a chance to look over the minutes? Is there any changes or recommendations to the minute from the last meeting?
I have one.
Okay.
Section 4.0, the 2022 UWP Committee Meeting schedule. It states that in addition to voting to move forward with the only the core program this year and the timeline, there's language stating that the committee voted to approve distributing the competitive funds equally to the 7 participating agencies. And that funding decision wasn't part of the vote.
I agree that correction should be made. Sherry, can you make that correction to the minutes?
Yeah, I think the way it's heard on the tape might have been confusing. So, because the conversation was all jumbled together. So we'll make that correction.
Make that correction. Since there's a correction, we do have to roll call it. I guess I need a motion to approve the minutes with Christina's correction to it.
I motion to approve.
And I need a second. Thank you. Angela Manning, your vote?
Approve.
Phil from CDOT?
Approve.
Christina from CTA?
Approve.
Thanks, Christina. Mayor Williams?
Yes, approve.
Tom Rickert?
Approve.
Holly Waters, Dustin from Metro?
Approve.
Dave from Pace?
Approved.
And Heather from RTA?
I'm sorry, am I approving the change to the minutes or my vote here?
The change to approve, the correction to the minutes.
Okay, approve.
Thank you. All right, as we progress today, the main thing we're going to do is everyone that has a proposal for core funding is going to give a short presentation on why they need the money, what they're going to use it for. If you're requesting an increase, if you can tell us why the increase and what you're going to use the funding for. And before we get into that, we're going to start with Angela's going to give a short introduction. Then she's going to give us her presentation for the CMAP core proposal. And when she's done, I'll call the rest of you in order as they appear in Dan's memo. It's all yours, Angela.
Thank you, Tom. Just a short, I did a short one this year. Sorry. In light of the fiscal challenges that COVID-19 has created for our regional partners and the need to provide funding to support their very important work in transportation and transit, CMAP is submitting for FY22 a budget proposal unchanged from 2021. We are not requesting an increase in funding. As we noted at our last UWP meeting, that the federal mark for 22 is unchanged at 18.7 million. The agency received 7 core UWP proposals, from 7 UWP members, core proposals only. 5 of the 7 agencies are seeking increases above their FY21 requests. The committee also agreed that for 22 that we would not hold a competitive program. And as a result of that decision, there is $476,000 in federal funding that's available to fund additional programming under the core program. For 22, CMAP's budget request consists of about 15 million in federal funding, and with the match, 18.7 million. The things that will be, our work plan will include all of our core MPO activities, which include the implementation of the region's long-range plan onto 2050, supporting local planning efforts through the local technical assistance program, collecting, analyzing, and disseminating transportation data, supporting required activities such as the TIP and congestion studies, and engaging in coordinated regional outreach activities. Some of the major projects that will be included in our work plan and that would be funded by this budget include providing planning advisory services to support our municipal partners, developing an equitable engagement program to complement existing CMAP outreach and engagement activities, and to remove barriers to participation in the regional process. Developing a visionary plan for the region to recover from impacts of COVID-19 through the engagement of a mobility recovery consultant. Aaron mentioned this at the last board meeting, that our plan is to bring on a consultant to help us in that effort. Continuation of freight bottleneck work to improve congestion and traffic safety in the region is ongoing work that we started in 2019. And we will continue that work through the FY22 budget. We have plans to hire a consultant to assist in CMAP's regional economic competitive work that will support the region's post-COVID-19 recovery process. We have to, as part of our core MPO activities, update the comprehensive regional plan onto 2050. And another core activity we plan to complete in that fiscal year is updating CMAP's website as it's a valuable communication tool for stakeholders and public outreach and engagement activities. So we made this, to maintain a flat budget from FY22, we had to make adjustments within the categories of our budget. And so our budget is a reflection of an increase of about 1.5 million in salaries due to the increase in pension expenses and medical benefits. But in addition, we have more people on our staff working on the UWP related activities than on some of our philanthropic and other external grants. So that caused an increase in our salary budget. There's a reduction in our direct costs of about $900,000, and that's really just us looking to push more of our costs to direct funding programming and looking for ways to cut our indirect costs across the agency. There's a reduction of about 1.3 million in consultant costs. The CMAP is seeking to perform more of our projects internally, and we're looking for additional funding sources for projects, whether it be through SPR, philanthropic grants, or other external grants to reduce that cost under the UWP. And we are doing a much better job of aligning our budgeting of our projects with better spend plans. And finally, there's an increase of $725,000 in other costs. And other costs is really for us general operating expenses, data subscriptions, IT support, and software that we needed to realize in our FY22 budget request. And so this budget supports the activities that when we produce the final work plan will be laid out in great detail with narrative and costs associated with it for FY22. And so I'm happy to answer any questions once we complete all the presentations.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Angela? Thanks, Angela. Phil from CDOT, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
It's all yours.
Okay. All right, thanks. So I just wanted to mention that the core proposal that we have very much reflects what we did last year with a few minor exceptions. First of all, we are asking for an increase. We saw an increase with the notion that if we did go with an equitable distribution of competitive funds among the remaining agencies, that our portion would reflect that. And so that increase is based on that approach. That's something that we can talk about later if that's still an approach that we want to do among agencies. Although I did notice in the memo that everyone kind of fits within the UWP allotment for FY22. So either way, we're kind of happy to go with whatever's best. The increase in funding would go towards staff time reimbursement and our 3 full-time staff persons that are funded through the UWP. The exception for this coming fiscal year for FY22, we're looking to replace some of our computers and monitors for some of our planning staff who charge time against the UWP, as some of their equipment have passed their life cycle. And unfortunately, with our budget funds, some of them have been swept. That would usually go towards replacing computers and monitors. So we're hoping to use UWP funds towards these purchases. And the breakdown of equipment needs is in the proposal. In terms of the main activities for our co-proposal, as mentioned, they remain mostly the same. The detailed scope is in our addendum, but some of the highlights include technical studies and analysis, including collecting and analyzing data for various planning efforts, carrying out planning studies for identifying potential transit, highway, bike ped, and other intermodal programs, projects, and policies, and then participating in scoping and process of other city department or public agency planning projects needed. We're also going to be involved in TIP development, between active program management, including participating in the project development and application selection process of federal and state fund programs that are included into the TIP, preparing city projects chosen during the selection process for inclusion into the TIP, documenting any TIP project scope of work, schedule, and cost changes, and preparing TIP amendments as needed. We're also going to be involved in planning, coordination, and liaison, which includes coordinating the integration of city initiatives and onto 2050 focus areas into city projects and policies. Attending meetings and providing assistance to city departments and other agencies as needed to advance and facilitate city's transportation program into the region's transportation planning and funding process. Representing CDOT in various federal, state, and local agency committee meetings, supporting the development and implementation of applications for planning funds, and coordinating and providing assistance to appropriate state departments, elected officials, and other agencies stakeholder organizations on the regional transportation planning process as developed by CMAP. So it pretty much reflects what we've been doing, with the exception of adding, potentially replacing computer equipment, and that's included into the proposal. So if anyone has any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Phil right now? Thanks, Phil. Next up, we're going to have Lenny from the Council of Mayors, but I want to make a star on this one. Before we finalize the vote on this on January 13th, Lenny and Dan are going to provide us a breakdown of which council is getting how much money. There's been a lot of discussion in the last couple of days about who's getting what. So to clear it all up, the easiest thing we're going to do is when we vote on this in January, we're going to vote on giving the Council of Mayors the 1.5 million in federal funds they asked, but we're going to break it down that North Shore is getting this much, Kane County is getting this much, South Suburban's getting this much. That way, when we're done voting after the 13th, there will be no questions. Everyone should be able, then Dan should start be able to do his agreements. IDOT can begin ours. Lenny, it's back to you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lenny Canada. I'm the PL for the North Central Council. So I'm the Council of Mayors program. We assist the MPO in various regional planning activities. I'm going to highlight quickly some of the main areas in our scope of services, our proposed scope of services. Communication and public involvement. This is where we operate, working with various members of the public and municipalities and getting kind of CMAP's message out there. Moving on, regional planning support and technical assistance. This is where we provide support to CMAP and its various programs in that regard, as well as assisting communication between the various local, state, and federal entities. Moving on, program development, the surface transportation program. Under this service, we essentially monitor, program, and distribute the sub-allocation of STP dollars that go directly to the municipalities through IDOT to CMAP and then to the region. Further on, program monitoring and active program management. This is where we list basically the alphabet of federal aid programs for our municipalities and communication with IDOT and pretty much advancing those projects. So our total request was for $1,526,000. Yeah, 1.526 million. This does represent a 4% increase from our FY 2021 allocation. However, our total budget overall has actually dropped by about 5% from a little bit over 2 million to about 1.9 million. So I'll be happy to take any questions. Sorry for a rush thing. I know everyone's busy and move on. So
Elaine, Tom, my one question.
Okay.
Since a lot of the councils went from the 50-50 on some people to 80-20.
I'm sorry, I forgot that. Yes, I'm sorry. So the increase was a result. So sometimes before I started, some of the councils had a 50-50 allocation as well as an 80-20, and that was to account for additional work. Now, since all the councils are essentially doing the same amount of work, we've decided to eliminate those 50-50 positions and put in, I'm sorry, I completely forgot about this. And this was like the biggest point I had written down on my Post-it note. So we're shifting completely to an 80-20 split. So that would account for the increase in our federal funds for a substantial portion of the increase. We've also switched to an expense-based budgeting metric. Previously, we used to get just an allocation to each of the councils based on population. That was a relatively antiquated system. So we shifted to the expense-based budgeting.
Right. And it requires some of the locals to put in less money than they have in the past, correct?
Correct. Yes, some of the locals will be putting in less, and some will,
Put in
yeah, no one would be actually putting in more, but yes, many will be putting in less than previously.
Which I guess this is a good year for that to happen. Does any
Absolutely.
questions?
Yeah, I had questions. Thank you, Lenny. That was on my list. Thank you, Tom. The two other questions I had was unallocated reserves. I noticed that over year, I see an increase in that category. And I know it's used for, can you kind of explain to us what it's for and why there's an increase in that?
So on each individual council budget, each one accounted for an unallocated reserve. I don't know offhand what it was for each council, but let's say for my own, I think I put $1,000 or $1,200 into unallocated reserves. Usually that goes to account for any increase in travel expenses, or if you put more miles on your car, or if there's another piece of software you have, or an additional, if you printed a lot of stuff. So essentially it was meant to be a very small amount, but essentially just kind of to be able to use for, it does not get used for personnel. I think that is still a long-standing rule. You can't increase personnel from that unallocated reserve.
And then I had one more question. I noticed that Kane, I'm sorry, my notes are kind of jumbled today. Kane and SSMMA had significant increases in their budgets. And I looked at, so just kind of, can you outline, give us kind of a general sense of what's driving those increases in costs? Because theirs were pretty significant this year.
Was it Kane and who?
SSMMA.
SSMMA. So I don't think Kane had, were they 8%? I think maybe year over year.
They were.
Okay.
It was us. It was.
But I think their total budget.
6.31. It was 6.3. Can you hear me?
Yeah, theirs was higher than normal. That's
Gotcha.
what my question is. So both of those, if you could.
Whoever's speaking on behalf of Kane, go for it.
Specifically SSMMA for sure, because theirs was about, I want to say, in excess of 15%.
Hi, this is Leslie. I'm with SSMMA.
Oh, hi, Leslie.
Hi, I'm the planning liaison there. The largest portion of our increase is really the staff. So going from that 50-50 to 80-20 is really what has made that large increase. And even the amount that we have in this proposal doesn't even cover the entire 80-20 of that second staff person.
On Kane Kendall, I do want to note that their 2021 total budget was 271,000. I'm sorry, 262,000 for 2021. That's their total budget. And their total request this year was for 232,000. So that was actually, so their total request went down substantially. That increase was basically due to the increase in federal.
Let me look. I can look while we are presenting. I'll go back and find the two, but I thought it was that. I made a note in there. There were two big increases, but SSMMA was definitely one of them. And we're saying that's because they go from the 50-50 split to the 80-20 split.
And that's for the Kane Kendall, I believe that was. And then I'll let South Suburban, since they're here, answer as they see fit. But we'll also be distributing the full breakdown, I think, as Tom mentioned before, the next meeting as well.
Okay,
Yeah,
with
Angela,
Kane Kendall, thank you. Yes.
this is Tom Rickard. I think Troy Simpson's on the line for Kane Kendall, even though I also deal with it, but we also went from a 50-50 to 80-20. And so there is some of that aspect of it, but I'll find out for you exactly and get you an answer. You know, we do represent two counties, and we have to coordinate with two different districts, District 3 and District 1, and so there's a lot of effort there.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you. And you I stand correct. I meant to say Kane Kendall. Thank you.
Any other questions for Lenny? So Lenny, before next meeting, I mean, like 2 weeks out, we need to send out a sheet with how much everybody's getting. It gets a little confusing.
Absolutely, I'll get that out.
On some of the Excels, because while the federal funds may be going up, the local funds are going down, and the total grant action goes down. But it's saving the locals quite a bit of funds.
All right.
If we have no more questions for Lenny, Christina are you ready to go?
Yeah, so Mike Fitzsimons from CTA is actually going to present our core proposal.
That's fine. Welcome, Mike. You may get called into emergency duty, Christina.
He's on here. I don't know where he is.
Mike Fitzsimmons?
Yep.
I'll try to unmute him. It won't let me.
He's unmuted.
Hey, Mike, I just unmuted you. I'm not sure if you can hear us.
Mike
Can everyone
Fitzsimmons?
hear me now?
Yeah, there we
We
go.
sure can. Thanks.
Okay, sorry for the confusion on that. I can't join folks on the audio because I'm in transit at the moment, but I will tell you that I'm the manager of the Capital Program Development Group at the CTA. And, you know, I've talked about this project, it seems like forever. I've been at the CTA for 25 years, and this project hasn't changed. And we're asking for the basic core requirement of the Capital Finance Group to do their activity that comes to the implementation of the capital program. Specifically, we're asking for a $625,000 project award for the development of the annual capital budget and 5-year plan of projects. This request is approximately about a 5% increase from last year's request. The ideal is that we're conforming mapping to the understood equitable distribution plan that I'm aware of. So that's the request, but I would also point out in past years, we've actually requested this amount and more because the actual scope of work and the man hours would suggest that we could fund a larger amount of money. But that being said, that this request this year is based off a project award of $625,000. So what do we do with this project? It's pretty basic. Core is the right word for this project. The capital finance staff, that once again, like I said, is responsible for implementing and management of the CIP and the submittal of all capital grants for the CTA. Staff's also responsible for the call of projects and the surveys, so surveys that flesh out all the information for the projects so that we can incorporate the projects in each annual capital program. Staff works closely with the Transit Asset Management Group to develop the guidance, benchmarks, and metrics for programming of the CIP projects so that we know that we're meeting our most urgent needs and that its information is incorporated in the transportation improvement plans. All this work allows the CTA to incorporate the projects, of course, into the regional transportation plan. And as said, we're requesting to pay for staff man hours related to this work. If I can make a brief note, we do have a 5-year capital improvement program, 21 through 25. Essentially, we're talking about 4 years of funding this year. The final year of the program has been set aside, and it's in the regional set aside for RTA. That's our federal formula programs and our state pay-go program. So when I speak of what are we investing in the 5-year plan, we're investing about $3.4 billion for years 2021 through 2024. Of that, about $1.8 billion are federally sourced funds. We have to invest these funds, program and plan these funds into the CIP. Staff will be working on the implementation of the projects and the grant works related to that. And we have about another $1.6 billion of locally sourced funds. Those consist of the Rebuild Illinois funds, the state bond program, and the state pay-go program. And we have a rather large CTA bond financing program. All of those sources will be matched with federal funds and be incorporated into the transportation improvement program of projects. What kind of projects do we have in general? Real brief. We have 3 major capital projects. The Red Purple modernization, we're under construction now. The Red Line extension, we're under project development at the moment. And we continue with a 5-year effort of investing in the rehabilitation of the O'Hare Blue Line. We're also going to construct 2 new substations at Berry and Damon on the O'Hare Line, powering powering tie house at Canal Station. We're also continuing to invest in our all-station accessibility program. Specifically, this 5-year plan allows for the Austin Green Line station to be renovated, where there'll be vertical accessibility improvements. CTA with CDOT will implement a bus slow zone improvement program. to construct a number of bus priority treatments over the highest bus routes. And briefly, the vehicles. We will fully fund the purchase of 556 new 7000 series rail cars. These are going to replace cars that were manufactured in the 1980s and put in service. We're going to go out and award a contract for the order of up to 600 buses. There'll be a base order of 100. We continue to do the overhaul in our fleet. We have a 5000 series overhaul program where we're going to overhaul 714 of our 500,000 series cars over the 5-year plan. Finally, we're going to do a life extending overhaul on 430 buses that exist in the existing fleet. This will allow for these buses to be operated through 2025, where they would be planned to be replaced at that point in time. So that's a brief synopsis of our capital program, and that's my presentation for today.
Thank you, Mike. Does anybody have any questions for Mike today? Thank you, Mike. Scott Henning from McHenry County. Are you going to give us a little update on what you plan to do with your portion of the revolving fund or rotating fund?
Yes, thank you, Tom. This is Scott Hennings with the McHenry County Division of Transportation. I'm the Assistant Director at the McHenry County DOT. Thanks for the opportunity to present today on our request for $240,000 in UWP funds for the development of our 2050 transportation plan for McHenry County. As you may or may not remember, this committee and CMAP funded our 2040 transportation plan back in 2011. So it's been 10 years, almost 10 years since that process took place. And we're at a point now where we'd like to update that plan to the year 2050, as many of our other counties have done in the region. The memo summarizes a lot of what our deliverables will look like, but basically, like most transportation plans, we're going to analyze their existing conditions, provide opportunities for meaningful public engagement, not only with residents, but businesses and others in the county. We'll be identifying safety issues, as well as capacity issues that exist on our system. And then we'll be developing a list of recommended projects and hopefully measure them against quantifiable performance measures as well. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's really what we're looking at. At your last meeting, Ryan Peterson, who's our transportation planner, presented on our 2017 transit plan that was funded by UWP as well. So we've gone through this process quite a few times in my time here. Every time we've gone through this process, we've demonstrated that we can deliver a quality plan in the time period that CMAP identifies. So, I'll be able to answer any questions if there are any, but thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thanks, Scott. Does anyone have any questions for Scott today? All right. With no questions, Dustin from Metra, are you ready?
Yes, indeed. Hi, I'm Dustin Clark, Program Coordinator 1 at Metra. I work under Holly Waters and Lynette Savarella. Our project request is an increase from last year up to $496,000 for a federal request, and we will be contributing, of course, the 20% match. This increase really captures many of our ramping up of our TAM implementation, and we will also have to update our TAM plan this year. In addition, we develop Metra's 1- and 5-year capital programs, which are much larger, as the CTA mentioned, thanks to Rebuild Illinois funds. And we also develop our long-range transportation plans, tips, and tip updates with this funding. The funding is entirely for staff time. From our previous request, we had 3 full-time equivalents, FTEs, included in the budget. This year, we're requesting funds to help staff 6 1/3 FTEs. And we have 12 major tasks outlined for the next funding year. 4 of them relate directly to our capital program development. That capital program is in excess of $1.7 billion. We have about 120 projects, and our group prioritizes and collects data on all of these projects, as well as amends the capital program with the Metro board and the RTA board, and performs investment prioritization each year that we develop the capital program. We also complete the RTA budget call documentation. A portion of our staff is involved with NTD reporting, National Transit Database reporting. We have increasingly devoted time to developing GIS mapping to help all of our user departments and to devote time to discretionary grant applications. Last year, our team captured $22 million that we added to our capital program through those discretionary grant applications, and we will continue to look for additional funding opportunities. This funding for the UWP core proposal would also fund staff time for TIP updates, as I mentioned, and CMAQ and STP progress reports and applications. This request does not include any overhead costs, does not include any consultant costs or other costs, and that will take us through the FY 2022 year. So I'll take any questions as you have them at this time. Holly Waters is also on the call and can take questions if needed.
Thank you, Dustin. Does anybody have any questions for Dustin at this time?
I do, but before I do that, I just want to say, Holly, it's been great working with you. We were supposed to announce that she's retiring, and I just want to say it's been great working with her as part of the UWP committee, so well wishes. Dustin, the only question I had is, when you talk about the 6.3 FTEs, are they existing hires that you're shifting to this funding because it's available, and then once, next year, depending on what the earmark is, the plans to shift them back to their original funding source? Kind of, what's the funding strategy with your FTEs? And I think that question is for all of those who have increases.
Okay, that's a great question. These are all current hires or current employees of Metra. We over the last year have worked to integrate our entity reporting data with our investments prioritization data, and our grants management team is now working more closely. So it does include much of their staff time.
Okay.
Thank
so you're
you,
just shifting them. Okay.
Any more questions for Dave? All right, Dave from Pace, are you ready to go? And Dave, you're going to do both projects?
Yes, Tom, thank you. I have with Kim Coy is on with us. She's our TDM project manager, and she could handle questions on for the ride share, the first project being the Pace Smart Mobility Regional Support. First off, I want to start off that the memo states that there's a 142% increase. What it is, what we requested last year was actually 144,000, and we only received 82.5. So from our original request to what we were requesting now, it's not as a large percentage of an increase versus what we actually received. So I just want to make that clear that there's the little discrepancy as to what we actually requested and what we received was less than the request. So this year we're requesting the 200,000, 160,000 federal, and the program. Essentially, the PACE Rideshare program, which we're calling the project the Smart Mobility Support, really supports upcoming regional mobility management strategies and recommendations from some of the ongoing projects that are going on in the TDM and alternative mobility services, such as Bedford Park's last mobility study. There's some other transportation alternative studies in the south suburbs and in Lake County. And really what we're looking at is encouraging the mode shift from some single occupancy vehicles to public transit and rideshare into our shared mobility elements. And what PACE is the rideshare provider in the region. We introduced a new website last year, and we're looking at making enhancements to that and updating it. We're also looking at working through on some of the incentives of forming existing rideshare carpools and moving into van pools. Obviously, this year is challenging for us in terms of with COVID and ridership, but you know, we're still seeing as part of our driving innovation, which is PACE's strategic plan, which we wanted to release in the spring, and obviously COVID had some impacts on that. We're planning a release early next year in January. It calls for a shared mobility element that is a large part of the service in the region. It's your working with the rideshare, with van pools, with our on-demand services, and working with TNCs and trying to have a shared mobility program. And part of rideshare would be a component of that shared mobility program. And right now, so we understand the challenges of rideshare, and you know, the ridership is down obviously on all sectors in the region, but you know, we're looking forward to how we advance, and we're still getting rideshare requests and support for van pools and ride shares from employees. And so how do we all structure ourselves in the future when we move into this? And so a lot of that would be existing support and marketing, and there's also a staff time component that we currently have right now on the program. With that, was there any questions right now on the rideshare component before we moved on?
No questions for Dave at this time?
Or Skim's here to answer. Oh, there's a question.
Yeah.
And the the tip, generally it's the core function of the program is what CTA and Metra have already discussed. It is our capital program. You know, we're under the same guidance of having the 5-year program and developing it. This year, you know, our capital program is not as intense as some of the other the rail elements to it, but we do have an increased number of projects. Particularly, we're looking at moving next year into a lot of new rehabs, or new and rehab garages. Particularly, Wheeling is going to be a CNG garage. Our Plainfield location is going to be an express bus garage for I-55. And North Shore and Southwest are expansion garages, and in River and Elgin is an expansion garage. And we're also looking at facility improvements such as the Harvey Transit Center. It's a joint project with Metra at the Harvey Terminal to improve the access at that facility and intermodal connections between Metra and Pace. And we're also looking at I-290 service, I-294 service with a tollway out operating from the south suburbs to the northwest suburbs. And we also have our new pulse lines that we're in construction with on Dempster moving next year. So this would be support for our capital program, the TIP, and the our TAM plan. But like I said, all 3 service boards, we follow the same guidance, and we have our own capital programs. We submit them to the RTA, become part of the regional capital program. And it is for staff support. So it's the existing staff, but we charge off our time based on those activities for those related pieces of work. So any questions on those?
I just wanted to add a quick thing about the rideshare. With the public transit cuts in the region, now more than ever, essential workers need an affordable option. They're coming to the Pace Rideshare website saying There's no bus service. There's only bus service in one direction. Uber and Lyft are too expensive. I don't drive. I don't own a car. How am I going to get to work? How am I going to get to the grocery store? And that kind of thing. And there's also 5 studies and pilots underway that Peace would like to support. And previously, we used to receive about $175 in grants for a good 5-6 years. So just wanted to add those in.
Thank you, Kim. That's the last of our presentations on our proposals today. One of the things that's really unique this year is that we probably could have voted on this today because everybody played nice and asked for an amount that we can give them. If we would have known that, we probably could have had the final, at least line item budget prepared and approved. But normally we had to negotiate, you know, someone would give up something, someone would add, someone would decrease to get it to balance out. This year, I think we're within 5,000 or 6,000 of the total amount that's available from Federal Highway Administration and FTA. So between now and January 13th, the main thing we got to do is if everyone's happy with their request amount, that's probably what you're going to get. We want to clear up with the council mayors to identify how much each council is getting, all 12 individual, what's their number. And then we'll be prepared to vote on that on January 13th. Does anybody have any observations or comments that we need to go over at this time?
So I just want to mention that there wasn't, so we made a request of everyone, or I can't recall the due date, to submit recommendations on this budget, and we only received one. It was a collaboration between CTA and CDOT, I believe, and it was really a recommendation to just equally divide the competitive funding to all the agencies except for CMAP. And so I think that's how they designed their budget. So I just want to make that clear. That was a recommendation they made after the last UWP committee to prepare for the FY22 budget. So we didn't get multiple recommendations or proposals.
Right. And Phil from CDOT, I think you realize that you asked for your portion as an equal percent of the total, but you were happy with what everyone else had presented. Am I correct with that now?
Yeah. If everyone is fine with their requested increases, we're fine with ours, and yeah, we can move forward. It as you pointed out, Tom, it's great that it all kind of worked out within the parameters of what's available with the federal allocation for FY22. So yeah, I think it's probably a good thing. So yeah.
So that's fine. I think we'll just continue on with all the budgets for each project as they were presented today. On the 13th of January, we'll get that finalized and we'll approve it at that meeting. It probably shouldn't be a long meeting on January 13th, unless, Angela, you think there's anything else we need to go over in January?
We might make a recommendation to do some presentation on projects just to see how they're progressing and those that have been completed. And then we'll probably talk a little bit about just making sure we need to talk, I'm sorry, this is big. We do need to start talking about the competitive program, how that looks in the future. You know, how we plan to address the components of that and develop a plan for IDOT and Federal Highways and FTA for consideration for fiscal year FY23. I'm losing my fiscal years here, 23. So we should set some time aside at that next meeting to have some dialogue about the future of the competitive program and what that looks like.
All right, thank you, Angela. At this point, do we have any public comment? If we have any public members online? With that, with nobody being opposed, we'll go ahead and adjourn for today. Everybody be safe out there, and we'll see you on January 13th.
Thanks.
All right, happy holidays.
Thanks, everyone.